Right. Good afternoon. This is Ruben Singh from 110th Consulting. I'm going to give it another minute here and we will get started. All right. We will go ahead and get started here. Thank you for joining the webinar. This is Grant Management in Salesforce. Again, thank you. I know that for nonprofits especially, this is a very busy time of year. So very much appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. I'd just like to do a quick check to make sure that folks on the phone can hear me. If someone doesn't mind in the chat, just indicating that they can hear me okay. If you can, somebody can just drop in the chat that they can hear me, then I know all the mics and audio is working okay. All right, looks like we are okay. Very good, that notification. So we're good. Let me just present my screen again. All right, a little bit about myself. My name is Ruben Singh. I have spent about 15 years in the CRM space and about 8 or 9 of those years in the nonprofit sector. I've been very fortunate to have worked with some of the most impactful nonprofits in the country. And while most of my experience has been on the technology side, I have found that despite taking many organizations live successfully with their CRM implementations, I've always felt that there was something missing. Despite finishing projects on time and on budget, I've realized that time and again, the technology alone is not going to solve problems. No matter how robust, how feature-rich, or how amazing your software application is, if the technology does not have everything else around it needs to be successful, then the implementation will likely fail. And what do I mean by everything else around it? Well, it's a number of things. It's having clearly defined processes. It means having a clear change management plan, a well-trained staff, the team to support the system ongoing, a release management process, you name it. There's many things I can list out here. Although there's many studies that are released that say, hey, this is, 70% of CRM implementations fail. In my experience, it rarely has to do with the technology itself. It usually has to do with everything else around it that makes it successful. That's one of the reasons why I started 110th Consulting. It's to not look at implementations in and of themselves, but to really align the people, the process, and technology all together in order to help your nonprofit achieve their mission. And do it in such a way that keeps your staff in mind and also your end beneficiaries. And we do that through a variety of ways, through strategy workshops, through needs assessments for CRM. We help with implementation itself, either new implementations or fixing your existing one, as well as user adoption and change management. So there's several ways that we can help. But enough of us. Let's move on to today's topic. We're going to talk about grant management in Salesforce. We'll first talk about why it's important to even track it, why I've chosen to select Salesforce for this demo. We'll get into the system itself and then talk a little bit about our experiences of what's worked, what hasn't worked, and pitfalls you can avoid. And then broadly speaking, things to consider as you head into potentially a new implementation. And of course, time for Q&A. You're welcome to ask your questions through the chat. And I will periodically check on it and then and answer questions throughout. Otherwise, towards the end, I'll open up the lines and we can ask questions then. So either way is fine. So let's continue to move forward. So why is it that it's important to track our grant information in the CRM? Many nonprofits that I work with, especially some of the smaller and medium ones, are perfectly fine with their spreadsheets. So why is it important to even track it in the CRM? Well, I have a few thoughts on that. On the one hand, there's a lot of CRM information to be tracked. So, there's people's, there's interactions, there's calls, there's meetings, there's notes, the to-dos, and you need a place to track all that historical information in one place that everybody has access to. Not only the interactions, but also what events a constituent may have participated in or what mailings they've received from us. The more information we know about the constituent, the better and easier it is to establish a relationship with them. But the reason that this process hasn't always fit well into some of the typical fundraising solutions out there is because the sales cycle is very different than other fundraising. It's not very transactional. It's not just logging a donation in the system and sending out an acknowledgement. The cycle can take months, if not years, to win a grant. In fact, it's very much like the sales cycle of many for-profit corporations for large purchases. And this is one of the reasons why I chose to demo Salesforce, because for those of you who know, Salesforce is primarily just that. It's a sales tool that manages sales cycles. So that cycle is really the bread and butter of what Salesforce does. Whereas sometimes Salesforce gets criticism from the nonprofit community as, hey, they don't have their roots in nonprofits. They're more for corporations. I actually think in this case, it's a real benefit that Salesforce, their root core functionality is built in that sales cycle, and it is perfect for grant management. But ultimately, what we want to do here is make sure that we have that 360-degree view for the constituent. I talk to grant writers and development professionals all the time, and they say, every time we write a grant, we're starting from scratch. We've written all this information before, we've tracked all this information before, but we never know where it is. So this is a place not only to keep all the information about your relationships in one place, but also the history of the grants that you've written, the grants that you've won, the grants that you've lost, and the processes that took you there. All of this builds institutional memory, and all can be kept in your system to make you more efficient over time. So why did I choose to demo Salesforce? There's other fundraising tools, other grant management tools out there, but I did choose Salesforce. For one, it is an innovative platform, as many of you are probably familiar with. You've seen any of the marketing. It's a platform that's used for organizations all over the world in any type of sector. But they do have a nonprofit specific app that sits on top of the application. It's referred to as the Nonprofit Cloud or the Nonprofit Success Pack or the NPSP. I might use any of those terms interchangeably. And so that is one area where it's definitely unique. And the grants management application, or the feature, I should say, is part of that app. It comes free with the app. Salesforce is a configurable and customizable system. So, even if you're not a programmer, you have the ability to configure and tailor the system to your needs. And if you are a programmer, you can customize it to do just about anything. So in that sense, it's a highly customizable platform. The other thing here is it has the App Exchange. So App Exchange is like a marketplace of various apps that can extend or enhance the features that you have in Salesforce. So there's all these developers out there who are building apps on the platform, similar to like an iPhone and the iTunes store. You can basically add these apps to enhance your experience. So there could be prospecting tools that you might want to add to your system, or grant distribution that might be you want to add to your system. So these are various apps that you can find and add to your system. Of course, you would need to test them all out, but it's a very robust exchange or marketplace of apps. The next item here is the nonprofit cloud is driven by the community. So once you have access to the nonprofit cloud, you have access to the Power of Us hub, where nonprofits all over the world are exchanging ideas and best practices and questions and troubleshooting. But they're also suggesting ideas on how Salesforce can enhance their product and recommendations. And Salesforce does from time to time review that and incorporate some of that feedback into their roadmap. So unlike some of the other tools that I work with that has like a dedicated product team that really focuses on advancing the product, Salesforce does take information from the community and incorporate that into their roadmap. The last point here is if you are a registered 501c3, Salesforce.org will donate 10 licenses through their Power of Us program. You would just need to apply for it and you get the licenses. It's a very generous offer, I would say. I also put it low on the list. I don't think it should be your deciding factor to go with Salesforce. I wouldn't call it a cost-saving mechanism because Salesforce is also one of the more complex systems. So you might have you might need some help loading data. You might need some help with some consulting hours or third-party apps. There are costs involved. So it is free in the same way as I say you would get a free puppy. It might be free at the time, but it takes some love, it takes some care, and it takes some maintenance. So that is a little bit about Salesforce Nonprofit Cloud and why we chose to demo that. I'm going to take a quick pause here just to make sure there's no questions that I have in the chat. Looks like I'm okay. So we will continue. All right. So there's lots of grants management processes out there for nonprofits. I just picked one that I thought resembles a little bit about what we're going to talk about. But they all sort of follow this general process. There's this vetting or researching, prospecting, analysis, whatever you want to call it. Then there's the actual applying to grants, and that is in the pre-award stage. There's some level of payment scheduling. You can call that an accounting phase. So this is sort of in the post-award step. And then there's the monitoring and reporting. So once you've awarded, there's typically some deliverables, some reports, or certain things that you need to follow up on, certain dates that are critical, and then of course reporting on your impact and your outcomes. So this is sort of the overall grants management flow that we're going to talk about as we jump into the system. So one thing before I demo, a couple of caveats or a couple of disclaimers, I should say. One is, if it's not obvious already, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. This is more designed for nonprofit professionals who are applying for and receiving grant money. There are other organizations that actually distribute grants. There's nonprofits that distribute grants. That's really not going to be the focus for this discussion. I have thoughts on it. It might be a separate webinar on grant distribution and other tools that you can use. But the goal of this particular webinar is more for fundraising professionals, nonprofit development professionals who are accepting grants and applying for grants. Also, as I demo things, you'll know if you've seen my webinars before, I like to keep the demos as out of the box as possible. I'm more of a technologist than I am a salesperson, so I like to see what I'm going to get, not what I'm being sold. So the demo that I'm going to show you is very minimally configured for the purpose of this demo. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little about accounts, relationships, what a grant opportunity looks like, how to track activities, action plans, grant deliverables, some basic automation you can do, and then a quick look at reports and dashboards. So this is what we're going to focus on as we jump into the demo. Let's do that now. All right. I'm also making an assumption here that those who've seen this, they have some familiarity with Salesforce, so I won't really talk too much about what this is and navigation. So I'm assuming that you have some knowledge of what Salesforce looks like, but if you need a little bit more of an overview of that, by all means, send us an email, and we'd be happy to do a free overview for you and demo the system for you. And so what I have here is my homepage, and I have all the key things as a nonprofit professional, certain things that I want to see. What are my tasks for today? What are some key things I should be aware of? Hey, some of these grant opportunities haven't had any activity. Where are my grants in the process right now, and any recent items that I've looked at. Of course, this can be configured and customized to meet your needs of the specific things you'd like to see when you log into the system. We're going to start off by looking at an account in the system. I'm going to go to the Gates Foundation. And I'm just going to take you through a little tour of what types of information that we have right now. So obviously some basic contact information, their foundation, my primary contact, phone, website, emails, addresses, a little bit about who they are, their history of giving within our organization, so on and so forth. But as I scroll down, you'll see that there's a few out-of-the-box fields here. One is called grant-making information. Sorry, one is called funding focus, and the other is just a checkbox to indicate that they are a grant maker, because I can have lots of accounts in the system. And I can indicate what area of interest they are in. So obviously, this is a configurable box. You can put all your values in there that are of use. I can enter as many or as few of these as I want. And I've indicated that here that they are a grant maker. These are just two fields. Of course, you can configure and add as many fields as you want, as you're researching, let's say on philanthropy.com or grants.gov. If there's certain information that you want to track about this account, you can store it right here. So these are just two very basic fields to get you started. And having that grant maker checkbox is nice because then I can always create a list view that says, give me all my grant makers. And I'll just do that really quickly here. I'll go to accounts, and then I will create a new list view. And I will say, this is just gonna be for grant makers. For now, I'm gonna be the only one who can see it. And I'm gonna say, give me all my accounts where grant maker equals true. And save that. And those are my 3 grant makers. So again, very simple, creating list views. Any user in the system can do this to create, very simple or very complex filters. Moving along here, now that I have my accounts, I've tracked some basic information or prospecting information. Another point to call out here is tracking your affiliated contacts. So right now I have 3 people who are tied to the Gates Foundation. I have their grants manager, their administrator, co-founder, but I like to have you think a little bit broadly here. Who are all the people that you might have, that you might know of, that might be affiliated, not necessarily work for, but might be affiliated with the Gates Foundation in some way, shape, or form? You want to make sure you track all those people. As you track them in the system, you might find, hey, well, if I go into Mark's record, I'll see that he has an affiliation with the Gates Foundation. He may have also attended the same university as me, or he might be a part of the same associations, or donate to the other nonprofits that I donate to. So this is where the relationship building comes into play. So make sure you have all your affiliated contacts tracked to the Gates Foundation so you can see where maybe internally you might have some influence. So key thing is, once you have your organization set up all your affiliated contacts, both the people who work there as well as people who are affiliated. Once all this is set up, you want to create your grant opportunity. So for those of you familiar with Salesforce, grants uses the opportunity object, and it has its own record type. So I'm going to say new opportunity here for the Gates Foundation. It's going to give me my list of opportunities I can choose from. I'm going to select grant. And let's say, for example, here I'm going to call this the $12,000 FY19 Q2 grant opportunity for the Gates Foundation. I'm going to put my primary contact. Bill and I are on a first name basis here. I'm going to put $12,000, and I'm going to say I'm really aggressive. We're going to close this by the end of the year. And I am going to link this to a campaign because there might have been some marketing activity that we've done to get to this point. I'm going to select my stage. So these stages are specific to grants. You're not going to find this on the donation or the major giving side. And these are a set of standard grant stages I can use. Of course, I can configure this to whatever is specific to my organization. I'm going to call this prospecting. It defaults to probability. It says our confidence level is about 10% right now. As I change the stages, you'll see it will increase. Again, I can change that mapping if I want to, depending on the stages that I create. Now, as I scroll down, I can fill out as much grant information as I want. So my requested amount is here. I can enter the website because it's not always the standard company website that has all the grant details. If there's a contract number, if there's specific program areas that are funding that they're willing to fund for this event, for this grant, contract dates. I can track as much as I want to. So again, you can extend this to add more fields about specific things you want to track about this individual grant. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple, put $12,000. I'm going to call this unrestricted. Very optimistic here. And I'm going to save the grant record. So there's a lot of information you can fill out, but very little information you have to fill out in order to save it. So here's what the grant opportunity looks like. And you can see the various stages. You can see I'm currently at the prospecting stage. And we filled out some basic information. I did talk to you about the stages. Now that I have this set up, I can also create some activities. So let's say I'm going to go to my activity tab here. I'm going to create a task for myself to do an intro call with Bill. I'm also going to schedule that for tomorrow. I can, send a follow-up letter of some sort to remind myself to send a follow-up letter after that call. Ooh, there. And we'll schedule that for Monday. Also to Bill. And so I can, again, just create, and then you can see all my next steps are created here. All my calls, meetings, notes, to-dos, all the history will appear here, and all the next steps will appear here. But there are some organizations that say, you know, for our grants process, we have a very specific process we want all our people to follow. It's a tried and true method, and we want everybody to follow it. And so rather than having to create these one-off tasks and meetings every single time you create a grant, you can use what's called an engagement plan. This is standard out-of-the-box Salesforce functionality. I'm gonna go to engagement plans right here. I'm gonna say new, and I've actually created a template ahead of time, which took me about 5 minutes, and I created a template called Prospecting New Grant Opportunity. And if I save this, it's going to automatically create a series of activities. I'm just gonna refresh that. Yep, there you go. Here, let me go back to where I was. And I'll go back to the activity tab. And it automatically creates a series of activities that I need to follow up on as a fundraising professional. So I have my intro call, I have my research, I have a follow-up. These are actually the two that I created individually. The rest of these came from the engagement plan. I draft internal research summary report, I schedule internal review meeting, and you can see that I can set the intervals however I like. And of course, all this does is it drops these activities onto your opportunity. I can edit each one of these, assign it to a different person, change the dates, change the details, but this is just a quick way to get all your engagement plan activities onto your opportunity at once. So those are how you would use engagement plan within your opportunity to manage your grants. So we talked about stages, engagement plans, activities. Let's say you get to the point where you want to submit your letter of intent. I can mark that as the current stage. You can see that it changes it here. If I go to the details, you'll see it changes the stage and increases my probability to close. Let's say I have a physical document, the actual letter of intent that I want to upload to the record. I can surely do that. I'm going to just select Add Files. I have the sample letter of intent letter that I can upload from my hard drive, and there it is. And of course, I can put several documents here. Again, probably something I should have mentioned. If this instance of Salesforce looks different than what you have, it's probably because this is the Lightning edition, Lightning version. So last couple years, Salesforce has been encouraging folks to get on the Lightning version. And I bring that up now only because Files looks a little different than in the classic version. So if my Salesforce looks different than yours, it's most likely because it's been upgraded to Lightning. And we encourage everybody to move to Lightning as quick as possible because you can take advantage of a lot more functionality that Salesforce has to offer. All right, so that was the last thing I wanted to show there with attachments. The last couple pieces about grant management is scheduling payments and then deliverables. Let's talk about deliverables first. So I have all these activities, these calls, these meetings, these notes, to-dos. These are all the interactions. But I don't want to lose the specific deliverables that are due as part of this grant. So what we have here is this object here called deliverables. And I can say that, I have a, letter of intent is actually a very good example of a deliverable. So this is the letter of intent due. It is type LOI, and I can indicate specifically when it's due. It's on the 1st, and then I can indicate when it's actually closed, and any details I want about the requirements. So this allows you to separate where the key deliverables are for the grant without getting it mixed in with all the calls and meetings and notes and that sort of thing. What I also like about this, and I've seen other organizations do this, they don't just use deliverables for the pre-award stages, they actually use it for the post-award stages too. So let's say I have a quarterly report that I need to submit as part of the grant requirements. And I can call this interim report and indicate my due date. And so obviously now that this is a custom object, I can run reviews on it, I can do reports on it, I can have dashboards on it. So you can track all your deliverables both for pre-award as well as post-award. So that's a feature I personally like very much. And then the last part of it is scheduling the payments piece of it. So let's say you get to this point, you're in the LOI stage, you submit, let's move to application submitted, and you're at a point where you're starting to talk about how these payments would be paid out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the payments list right here, related list. I'm gonna say schedule payments. And it's $12,000, and let's say that they are going to give me 12 payments monthly, so I'm not going to change anything there. I, of course, can change it if I want to, if there's a different arrangement. And it's going to come in as checks, and I'm going to say calculate payments. What it does is it gives me a payment schedule, and nothing has been paid so far, and it just evenly distributes it, 1,000 each. And before I actually say create them, I can change anything I want here. So let's say up front they say, you know what, we're not going to be able to do those first 3 months of payments. Just add that $3,000 to the March payment. So if you have a customized payment schedule, you can adjust all that here, the dates, the amounts, so on and so forth, and then say create payments. Before I say create payments, I'm going to indicate that we got 1 payment today. That's not realistic before we've awarded it, but I just wanted to show you how that would look. So the payments are created, and if I highlight the payment section here, you'll see that the first one is paid. It has the payment date, and then all the unpaid ones associated with it. And of course, if I get to a point where, and I can still, on an individual basis, update any of these payments if I need to make changes. Again, change the date, change the amounts, write off specific ones, or I can write off all the payments. If I select the write off payments right here, it will change all these unpaids to cancels. So rather than having to go one by one, you could write them off all at once if you had to for some reason. So that's how you schedule payments. Now, I will just sort of throw out there that that's about all you do with payments. This is not like a full general ledger accounting system. So this is kind of as far as Salesforce takes it. You can manually update that a payment has been made, but this is by no means an accounting system. You'll probably need a separate accounting system to reconcile your books for year end and that sort of thing. And that's surely integrations that we've seen and worked on. That is the grant opportunity, the grant module. One thing just that I think is nice is that when you go back to the opportunity, it will show you when the next deliverable date is due. So it's going to kind of take a look at any deliverables that you have associated with this grant and call out when the next date is. All right. And that really wraps up most of the things I wanted to cover. We'll just briefly talk about Process Builder and reports and dashboards, but I'm just going to pause for a second here to see if there are any questions in the chat. I do not see any, so that's good. Hopefully this is all making sense. Let's talk about Process Builder. So this is a very, very basic automation that I created. One thing that's very important here is communicating. Because especially since grants life cycles can take a very long time, you want to make sure that you are communicating with everybody on the team. I always recommend Chatter. So anybody who is in any way affiliated with this grant opportunity is going to want to follow this record. And so by selecting follow here, and they'll also see all the chatter associated with it. There's some things that are automated in the chatter. So in this case, it shows when there's a stage change. I can also indicate here, hey team, we're very close to closing this, very close to winning this grant. And I can do all kinds of things, emojis, images, all kinds of things I've seen people put in this. It's basically a social media center, but for this particular record. So you can really tag anything that you want, and anybody who's following the record will either get their email or they'll get a daily digest of all the chatter associated with the records that they're following. But one thing I thought I would add here is when the grant is won, I have to make sure that I send out a chatter because I want everybody to be aware that we've won the gift, we won the grant. So rather than having to enter it every time, I created a process builder or an automation that automatically posts a chatter when we win. So let's say here I set this to close. I say select close stage, and it's awarded. So we win it, and it's saved. And I'm just going to refresh this for a second. And I go to chatter. Here we go. You will see that there is this, you will see that there is just now a chatter has been added saying, congratulations team, we've just been awarded a grant of $12,000. Thanks for all your hard work. So I didn't enter that, but it just automatically showed up. So I'll show you how I did that. And so this is sort of borderline. I'd still say that a non-developer can do this. I'm not a developer, but this is probably the far end of what you'd want to do unless you are a developer. So I'm going to go into the setup here. Of course, you would need admin rights to be able to do this. I'm going to go to Process Builder. And I set up a very simple process. It took me about 5-10 minutes. I called it Post Grant Win to Chatter. And very simple. I'll just kind of walk you through it. I first said that the object I'm working with is opportunity. This action is going to fire only when a record is created or edited, so not just when it's created. And then I set this up saying, once the stage hits awarded, so once this condition is met, where the opportunity stage name equals awarded, then what are we going to do? We're going to post to Chatter. And the post to Chatter is going to be, congratulations team. We've just been awarded this grant, and I put the amount. This is a merge field, so whatever the amount is, it's going to drop in there. Thanks for all your hard work. I indicated that I wanted this to go to this record, post the Chatter of this record, as opposed to some like grants management group or something, but I could choose a group if I wanted to. And that's it. So a very simple, two-step process. Check to see if the stage is awarded. If so, post this message to Chatter with this variable. And that's it. And so this is just an example of a very simple automation that you could do to streamline your process and make things a little bit more efficient. All right. So that is, the last thing is reports. I'm not going to go too far into reports because I feel like, there's so many things available for report writing, so it's probably not too interesting. But if I just search for grant here under reports, oh, I'm sorry, I went the wrong place. Under all reports, and I just search for grant, you'll see these are out-of-the-box reports that we have. So anything from my pipeline planning to see what grants came in this year, organizations, total grants received. So these are out-of-the-box reports that you will see specific to grants. Another one that I often use, and I see some of, a lot of admins typically use, is expected payments that are overdue. These are just expected payments in general. In general, these are all grant record types, but it could potentially have other record types in there, in which case I would just create a quick filter and only use grant. But in this case, it only has grant opportunities in here. So plenty of opportunities there with reports that are out of the box that are typically sufficient. There are also some dashboards that are available specifically for grant purposes. Let me show you one or two of those. Yes, this is the one, the NPSP Grants Management Dashboard, a very simple dashboard that gives you a few key performance indicators to look at. So using the close date, what is the amount by close date? You have your little gauge right here. Grant planning, what stages are they in? Total grants received, I haven't won any yet. So not great data here to support this, but just know that I have this ability to use this. There we go. I just refreshed it. So it showed some updated information. So you can see the gauge, based on what our goal is. Our goal is $75,000. Here's where we're at. Grants received. We just awarded that Gates Foundation one, so on and so forth. So just an example of one of the dashboards that you can create. And of course, you can subscribe to it, get daily updates of this dashboard, or have it emailed to you. That concludes what I was hoping to show with the demo. Let me again take a quick look to see if there's any questions in the chat. Doesn't look like it. So I'll cover the other items in my presentation here. We'll probably wrap this up a little early. So one thing I often get is, you've implemented this grants functionality, this module for other people, both with Salesforce as well as other apps. What worked? What worked? What didn't work? How can we avoid some of the mistakes others have made? Well, here you go. Here it is. So first is I recommend having a very clear process. Lots of times I work with organizations who do not use any particular centralized platform, and they're using their spreadsheets, they're using their Google Docs, they're all using their own things. And then we say, okay, tomorrow you're going to start using Salesforce, and it's a complete mess because everybody's using it differently. So as simple as it sounds, I recommend starting with a very clear process. And if you don't have one, that's okay. Start with what Salesforce offers out of the box. There's some best practices already baked in. So if you're okay with it, start with the one they have there with the prospecting, LOI submitted, so on and so forth. But having a clear process before you get folks in the system is critical. Second thing is use your terminology. If you don't use a letter of intent, or you don't call it awarded, or you use some other terminology, Salesforce is highly configurable. So change it to what your terminology is. It's going to make it a lot more clear. It's going to avoid mistakes, and it's going to help user adoption over time if people see language that they're familiar with. Third is track everything. And I know this is especially tough for people working with grants, because, why does this one phone call really matter when, this grant is not really going to get paid out for 2 years? Well, it does matter. All those calls, all those meetings, all those to-dos, all those interactions really demonstrate your relationship with that organization over time. So all that can come in handy, and really in the most unpredictable of ways when you have conversations with a grant maker. So track everything in the system. And again, for the reasons that we talked about earlier, you want to make sure that you have institutional memory, institutional history. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. It's important to track everything. Some of the more successful organizations have this, mantra of, if it's not logged in Salesforce, it didn't happen. So that's something I always think is very helpful. And that leads right into the executive buy-in. If your development director says, oh, that's nice, I'm glad you're using Salesforce. Now bring me a spreadsheet of all your grant opportunities. Chances are your implementation is not going to get very far, and you've probably wasted a lot of money. So organizations that are successful are ones who run their grant meetings through Salesforce or their CRM tool. They say, okay, it's time for our one-on-one. Let's bring up your dashboard and see where your grant opportunities are at. So executives and leaders who use the system to measure and report on, they're the ones who get the most user adoption and the most out of the system. The fifth thing is define a communication process to tie back checks to grants. I get this question all the time. Well, I set this grant up in 2015. The actual check came in 2018. How do I loop it right back to the original grant? There's no silver bullet to that. There's no easy way. I've seen some organizations build some complex algorithms to say, okay, if the gift is for this amount and it's for this company and with this contact, then assume it's part of this grant and automatically associate with it. But moreover, I'd say that it tends to be a bit of a manual process. When that check comes in, especially large checks, you're going to want to check the organization, see if there's an open payment due, and manually tie it back. And that really requires a lot of communication. It requires chatter. Hey, I just received this gift. Is this tied to any open grants? So that communication process is really key, because you really can't, which is number 6 here, tracking and measuring your results. You can't really track the ROI on your grant efforts if you are not tying those dollars back to the grants. So it's very important to have a good communication plan with your entire development team to socialize those checks when they do come in and make sure they're tied to the appropriate grant. And that allows you to do number 6 here, is tracking and measuring your results. The 7th here is tracking and measuring your process. And this is something that nonprofits often forget. It's like, sometimes the grant is awarded and you just kind of move on to the next one. But, ask yourself, what are those things that we did? If we look at our last 5 successful grants, what were the steps? What were the meetings? What were the notes? What were the to-dos? What was the frequency? What was the cadence? What was the actual mailings that we sent out? What sort of combination of email versus face-to-face versus letters versus phone call? What's the process that worked? Because perhaps that's something that we can incorporate in our overall process. And as we bring on new fundraising professionals, that is the process that we encourage them to follow. So having all this tracked in the system allows you not only to track results in dollars, but also the results of your process and identify what's working. So those are some suggestions on what's worked. So here are some other broader things to consider if you're considering either a new implementation of a grants management software or Salesforce, or you want to sort of clean up what you have. The first thing I would do is revisit your grant management strategy. Again, make sure the stages make sense, the action plans or the engagement plans under each step make sense. And if not, now's a good time to change it before you throw it into a new system. Also define the rules of engagement. So if you're an organization that manages all your grants in a separate application or in spreadsheets, and now you're in the centralized platform and other people are looking at your data, you want to make sure that you have a good communication plan on when it's okay for them to speak to someone else, to speak to a prospect of yours, and when it's not. So these rules of engagement are very important. Rather than just siloing data and saying, I don't want anybody to see my data. It's good that everybody can see the data, but just have clear rules as to when it's okay and not okay to speak to any of my prospects. You also want to invest some time in thinking about your business processes. So if your grant management cycle is not working and you have a new system and you just sort of throw that not working system into a new system, you're probably going to have the same results. So it's always a good idea to rethink your business processes, document the current, document where you want to go, and that's what you end up building into the system. I would strongly invest in data cleansing and deduplication at this point of the project. So before you really go headfirst into a new system or a revised system, you want to invest some effort in cleaning up your data. Obviously, if you want to build relationships with your constituent, and if there's 5 records in the system for one person, nobody knows who's the right one, you're not really getting a clear view of who that constituent is and how they've engaged with you. And when people see data they can't trust, they tend not to use the system. If you're starting up with a new implementation or project here, identify all the key metrics and reports that you want to see. So, I want to know on a daily basis X, I want to know on a monthly basis Y. Have all those things ready. So, when you're looking at demos or you're talking to your consultant about what you want to do, don't let them tell you what you should do if there's already things you need. So bring those up. Even bring those up in sales demos and say, these are the metrics I want to see. How does the system present this? Especially when it comes to implementations, number 5, identify your must-haves for day one. So if you have some, quirky accounting process every time a grant comes in and the system needs to account for it, make sure that information is exposed as early as possible. Last thing you want is you can't process a donation on the day that it's received. So any sort of must-haves or critical things needed for day one, make sure that's known early on. As always, I recommend a phased approach. So let's say you want to build integrations with prospecting software. You want to build integrations with grant distribution software. All good stuff. I wouldn't do it in phase 1. I recommend the crawl, walk, run approach, where you basically just get the platform up and running, you migrate some data, get people comfortable with the system. Then let's talk about enhancing the system. Then let's talk about adding more fields. Let's talk about adding more reports. Let's add a dashboard. Then let's build an integration. So doing all that at once, it can be very costly and end up not being what exactly you really need. So a phased approach really helps uncover that and help you make some smart decisions. Number 7 here is to have a post-go live plan ready. So, you got all these new fundraising professionals in your system. They're using the grant management functions, and they have all these suggestions, all these great ideas and enhancements. You need to be prepared to triage those and troubleshoot those and prioritize those and get them in a subsequent release. So the systems that are most successful and the implementations that are most successful are when people see that they have a living, breathing system. It's something that's evolving with their organization. It's not just a one and done, and then a few years we'll do phase 2. They want to see a system that is constantly evolving to your business. So having a post go live plan ready, having a regular release schedule is critical. And the running theme through all of these is really investing time in change management. Moving from a spreadsheet or a grants management application to a centralized CRM platform is a huge shift. Bigger than it might seem. So rather than just cutting things over overnight and saying, okay, starting tomorrow you're going to use Salesforce, it's really important to engage users day one, even from the planning to the implementation, to the testing, to the training, really have folks engaged with the system as much as possible, using the system, touching and feeling it, understanding what's going to change, and more importantly, understanding what's not going to change. Your calendaring is going to stay the same. Your email is going to stay the same. This is really just a way to manage your grants better. So all these things are key to remember for change management, so that when Go Live comes around, nobody's really surprised with what they're going to get. So those are some suggestions, things to consider. And for many organizations, this is easy. You have change management professionals, you have training professionals, you have admins, you have developers in-house, project managers, and so addressing all these things in the last couple of slides is very straightforward. But for many nonprofits I work with, it's not that straightforward, and you don't have all the resources in-house that can help you manage this. There are consultants that can help you, and so I would choose wisely. You really want to make sure that you have a trusted advisor and not someone who's just going to be stuck there forever. You want somebody who's going to be there to help you only to the extent that you need. Nothing more, nothing less, and those are some of the things that we do at 1/10. We help everyone from business process mapping to project management to fundraising strategy, as I mentioned, to guiding you or doing the implementation itself. change management, and for some organizations, we stay on as the system administrators if you don't have one in-house. So, we do encourage you to find a consultant that you've worked with, or somebody you know has worked with, someone who you can really trust to guide you throughout the process. And of course, here at 1/10, we're happy to help. And so I want to end this the same place where I started, with gratitude. I thank you very much for your time. I'm going to take one last look at the chat to see if anybody has any remaining questions. And I don't see any. So I will wrap things up. Again, thank you so much. And I encourage you to please stay in touch with us. Check out our website, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. Send us an email if you have some questions, or if you'd like to have just a no pressure consultation. Talk about your unique situation at your nonprofit and where you need a little guidance. We're happy to chat through any of that. We also we're pretty active on our blog, so I would check that out as well on our website. And even if you're not ready to make a move for 6 months, a year, definitely check out our blog. Check out our social media sites, because we like to post insights pretty regularly. So these are things that might help you as you're making decisions, or if you're thinking of making a change, or how to get the most out of your CRM. With that, I thank you again very much. Appreciate your time, and have a great holiday week here, and Happy New Year.